Hello everyone, this is Soviet Russian Bear. Ladies and gentlemen, today my constant guest Joaquin Flores is back. Yes, it's been a long time, but he's back now. And I think it is obvious. The topic of our today's video is pretty obvious. It's Ukraine and the situation around Ukraine and regarding Ukraine. And oh boy, oh dude, I mean just the hysteria in the media is crazy, man. I received so many hate comments, like in my Facebook, in my Twitter, on YouTube. If you go on YouTube under the Russian national anthem comment section, you will read a lot of comments find like fuck Russia, fuck this, fuck Putin, and blah blah blah. Oh man, I don't know. I went on Omegle, Omegle, this video chat,
Hmm.
and there were a lot of people saying bad things about Russia. I actually have a video on my channel. Oh,
That's pretty crazy. It's
mhm.
very hard for Russians living uh, in other parts of the world. Inessa there in New Zealand, and she's probably just like avoiding the conversation at work and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So I mean, you can just imagine because the
mhm.
media is pushing people to be confused. But I want to tell you something that this climate is very different from 8 years ago
Yeah,
when you and I first met.
yeah, but I think we
Wow.
met a little bit before that.
Oh, that's right, because of
Yeah,
Morris.
because of Morris. Yeah, God rest his soul, by the way.
Yeah, yeah, right. That would have been like
Mhm.
2011.
2012, maybe. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So, but we were talking about the conflict then, and back then,
yeah,
um, like in Western cultures, only people who understood the conflict were the radical left, actually,
mhm.
and in Europe, the far right, like the small European far right movements,
Minority.
especially,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, especially like in Spain, Italy, Greece, France. Not so much Germany because their far right is like really messed up. Like
Hmm.
Ukrainian far right, but yeah, it was a very different climate. But what we saw is actually the understanding of a geopolitics and the history that the European far right had, despite being wrong about other things, right?
Yeah.
That geopolitical understanding through social media began to penetrate and become adopted by the mainstream conservative movement in the
Hmm.
US,
Hmm.
right? So you
Right.
have, for example, General Flynn, even though he has to follow a narrative about Ukraine, if you actually read his statement, he's saying this conflict could have been avoided had the US recognized Russia's legitimate security concerns.
Concerns. Yeah.
Yeah, and Tulsi Gabbard said the same thing. So she kind of represents like what Democrats used to be at some point, like before the Clintonization of the Democrats.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
See what I'm saying? And so it's a very interesting social media terrain. I'm seeing on social media mainstream, MAGA type pro-Trump, because the Trump is the mainstream of Republican now. So, so now a rhino are the people who used to not be called rhinos. And
Hmm.
now a rhino are people who are against MAGA, but people who are really deep into this, and that's probably 60 or 70% of Republicans,
Uh huh.
understand this. Probably 30, I would have to look at Pew polling, but it's less than before, but still probably 20-30% of Democrats actually understand that about the color revolution and George Soros
Yeah. Yeah.
in Ukraine, right? So could you, because
Mhm.
I know you've talked about this a lot on your channel here,
Yeah.
but can you tell people kind of like the from 92, like what were the big things like the '04 Orange Revolution, and then the back and forth anti-corruption with I call her Princess Leia Timoshenko, and then she's the facelift Princess Leia. And then you
Yeah.
have, and she's actually Armenian and something. She's not, like, all these people learned Ukrainian, by the way. Like, all these
Yeah.
people are not. That's what the problem with Ukraine.
Mhm.
And then tell us, like, what happened in 2014 and the constitutional changes and how it affected people's lives. And then as you're doing that, I will show some maps.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Let's do it. So in 1992, after the Soviet Union collapsed, Leonid Kravchuk, the first president of Ukraine, was Leonid Kravchuk, and he actually participated he was like the key figure in the dissolution of the USSR. He represented Ukraine during the Bielovesia Accords, like when they were signed in 1991. Yeah. Then
but the constitution that they got was not so bad.
Yeah, it was not so bad, absolutely. The 1992 Constitution, Crimea had like more rights as an autonomy. Yes, and so after Kravchuk, Leonid Kuchma was elected, I believe, in 1994. And Kuchma was, he was not exactly pro-Russian or pro-West, but he was like tried to sit on two chairs, like what they like to call it, a multi-vector policy. Like, I know this, maybe don't know, but he tried to sell some of Ukrainian weapons, especially anti-air systems, to Iraq, to Saddam. And for that, the US kind of was disappointed with him, and they kind of declared him a bad guy.
Yes.
Not publicly, but they put sanctions, I think, or something, or restriction on his possessions abroad in the West.
Right. But within Ukrainian internal life, even though he did things like sold weapons to Saddam Hussein when the U.S. was against Saddam Hussein, he also allowed changes in the culture promoted, like they call it Kuchmaism, which kind of starts to really promote this idea that Ukrainians are like a different people.
Oh yeah, Ukraine is not Russia. He had a book. He wrote a book. It's actually called Ukraina не Россия, which is translated Ukraine is not Russia. Like, Ukraine and Russian are not the same, not even the brotherly people.
Right, not brotherly people. He painted that Ukrainians are victims of Russia.
Yeah, absolutely. He propped up the narrative of the evil Holodomor, and that Ukrainians like are suffering under the Russian so-called occupation.
Americans will understand critical race theory. And so Kuchma was like a promoter of like a Ukrainian version of critical race theory, that in all dynamics, that Ukrainians are the victims, that Ukrainians are the historical victims. They're the victims of he would nod his head that yes, Ukrainians were the victims of Nazi aggression, but then they were also the victims of Russian aggression. And here we are, these poor innocent Ukrainians that have nothing in common with Russians except that Russians view us as lesser people.
Yeah, it's his narrative.
And that was put into universities and intellectuals and on talk shows, on the big TV networks. In the elementary schools, kids learn the victim narrative and not the brotherhood narrative, right?
Yeah.
So we call that, in the West, we call that, for those who come out of my field, we call that Kuchmaism.
Kuchmaism, oh yeah. I didn't know that term, but it's like Kuchmaism, like Hojaism or something like that.
Yeah, like Hojaism, but Kuchmaism,
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so after Leonid Kuchma was overthrown in the first Ukraine, the first Maidan, the first color revolution, which was like relatively bloodless, and although Viktor Yanukovych was clearly winning the election, yeah.
Okay, so we talk about 2004.
Yeah, 2004 election.
This is what we're looking at.
Yeah, we're looking at the map of Crimea, and the blue regions actually vote for Yanukovych.
Yeah.
Yanukovych, and the yellow and orange regions actually voted for Viktor Yushchenko. Yeah, yeah. But by the and you look at Crimea and Sevastopol, 81% and Sevastopol is 88% voted for Yanukovych. And
Look
you
at
see,
93% in Donetsk and 91% in Lugansk.
oh yeah, absolutely.
And
91.
look at how the Galician areas, like the hotbed of neo-Nazism,
Yeah.
in the yellow orange voted 90, 93, and 96, 95%. That's the Galician. Most of those are Galicia.
Yeah, Galicia. Yeah, the west, the lands that were uh, annexed by Stalin.
Yes,
I think
from
Poland,
Austro-Hungary didn't exist, but it would have been
Austro-Hungary. But
Austro-Hungary.
yeah, but by that time it was like in the Republic of Poland, the
Yes.
Pilsudski Poland.
Yes.
Well, a lot of people, when talking about fascism, like in Europe in the 30s, they bring up Mussolini and Hitler, but they never bring up Pilsudski. And I have to say that Pilsudski's Poland was actually a right-wing dictatorship.
Yes.
Okay, but we digress. We digress.
Yeah, I mean, but that didn't stop Hitler from invading. Also,
Poland.
Austria was a right-wing dictatorship, and Hitler still invaded. So
yeah. Okay, we digress. So, if you see the blue region is actually the Malorossiya, those blue regions.
Yeah, so Malo means little.
Little, yeah, little, and it's not little in a sense.
Russia. Sorry, you have to tell people what.
Yeah. And I have to add this, that little Russia is not in the sense of demeaning, like belittle them. No, it's like little is just small, like little small Russia,
like physically small.
Physically small, yeah, not morally small. It's not to humiliate or belittle, no. Yeah, it's just physical, means it's physically small. So yeah, but it seemed it was clear that Yanukovych was winning, but the Yushchenko's, with the help of Soros money, I'm 100% sure it was with the help of Soros money. Yushchenko started the protests. They started to get people out on the streets, like with this tent camps, the first Maidan. Yeah. And actually, what they did is they changed the constitution from a Ukraine became a parliamentary presidential republic.
A unitary state.
Unitary state, yeah, in the parliament.
Before it was a federal state.
Yeah.
So let me just, if you can. So again, this is 2004, everybody.
Yeah.
And you'll appreciate how, for example, Democrats want to stack the courts, or, the deep state wants to take away the rights of states. So everyone right now who knows what's going on, obviously with the thing, mandates or this, will appreciate that in the US, where we have a federal system, constitution, that if the governor says no, then unless it's specifically people know, not allowed by the federal constitution, then the state laws and the state constitution prevail. So, and Ukraine had similar from 92 until 2004. And so when Ukraine became, because of George Soros' color revolution and USAID and the National Endowment for Democracy and Radio Liberty, Radio Free Europe, Radio Sloboda, and so forth, it became a basically unitary state where Kiev can basically pick the leaders and pick the politics of every
region.
oblast and region. Sorry. So that's so people have a background.
Yeah, absolutely. It became a unitary state, and people of the southeast of the Malorossiya, they lost their, should I say, autonomy.
Yes, in the blue zone.
In the blue zone,
well, actually, all the states did, but it worked against really the strongest interest worked against in the blue zone.
Yeah, because the blue zone, these people are they are and they have always been pro-Russia. They didn't want to join Europe and to join the EU, I mean.
Now, these lands here, Lenin gave those lands to Ukraine.
Oh yeah, and Vladimir Putin mentioned this in his speech, like when he recognized the rebellious republics. He said that actually was Lenin's idea to incorporate these lands into Ukrainian SSR because he wished to add some of the proletarian like working element into the overwhelmingly peasant agrarian Republic of Ukrainian SSR.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know why he did that.
That was the ideological justification.
Yeah, ideological.
It was really a demographic one, but it helped Ukraine because the agricultural stuff is in the orange zone, and the industrial stuff was
in the blue zone.
In the blue zone. Well, the blue zone to the right there, the blue zone to the east.
Mm-hmm.
But the blue zone east of where people can see, I don't know if my mouse is going to record, but basically east of this area here was Russia before,
mm-hmm.
and then Lenin granted it to Ukraine, and that helped Ukraine have a balanced economy between industrial and farm.
Agrarian,
but it also,
yeah.
I mean, I'm going to say, I think the idea also was so that Ukraine had Russians in it. I think, I can see how that makes sense because people may not understand, but there were elections under communism, and how elections would turn out are based upon how people kind of see themselves. So even though the elections were fixed, they still had to like reflect something approximating reality so that the simulation wasn't broken. We'll put it like that.
Yeah.
So anyhow, now then we have the 2014. Again, this is Obama.
Yeah, Democrats and Obama, Biden was vice president back then.
Yeah.
And he gave his son. His son was in the Burisma holding. Like this was a very like profitable place with a lot of money. You can make they were making a lot of money off this Burisma company.
And then so then there was the 2014
war. Crimea.
Yeah. So then Crimea
succeeded.
Yeah, they seceded and broke off. And
then they
for like 2 days they were, or one day they were like an independent
state,
country, and then they had another
referendum
to join
Russia.
Yeah.
And that's what people do not understand when they say, "Oh, Russia annexed Crimea, evil Russia annexed Crimea." Actually, Crimea first seceded from Ukraine.
Well, first Crimea was Russia.
Yeah.
Then the communists later in the 50s gave Crimea. Stalin, I think in 51 or when was it? Gave.
No, it was Nikita Khrushchev, and
it was Khrushchev in 54.
54, yeah. Stalin didn't do that.
That's right. Khrushchev in 54. Mm-hmm. And where was Khrushchev from?
He was from. He's ethnically. I think he's ethnically like Ukrainian, but he was born in like Kursk Oblast. It's in the border region with Ukraine.
But he's Ukrainian.
Yeah, he's ethnically Ukrainian, I believe.
And he gave Russian Crimea to Ukraine when he was the head of the Soviet Union. That's kind of convenient.
Yeah. And I think the reason were mostly there were also like administrative reason and economic reason. You see the Dnieper water.
Yeah, so people can see this river right here. It's actually very wide in some places, many miles across in some places. It looks like an ocean when you're there.
Yeah, it's actually Dnieper River, and it's very wide and it's very full. It's so full of water, and for administrative and maybe
You're
economic.
like, it's so full of water. Yeah, bro, it's a fucking river.
I mean, there
Oh,
are a
sorry.
lot of water.
Yeah, it's a lot of water. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's wide and deep.
yeah, wide and very deep. Yeah,
Yeah.
and there is a saying is that a rare bird can fly up to the middle of Dnieper River.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Мгм. Редкая птица долетит до середины Днепра. It's just a rare bird can fly up to the middle of Dnieper.
And what the flying fuck does that mean?
I don't know, but
You don't even know
just
what
yeah,
does it mean?
it's just saying. Yeah,
But what does the saying mean?
I have no idea.
I mean, it's your saying. Okay, so all right, then you have the 2014 coup. Crimea breaks off, and then these two, the 91.24% area and the 93.54% areas here on the
Mhm,
right
mhm.
also break off, but the difference is Russia does not recognize it
Yeah, they
until,
did
last week.
until last week. Yeah,
Right, but this is 8 years ago
8 years. Yeah,
now that these broke off, and this one broke off. Crimea and Donetsk and Lugansk, they break off. There was even talk at the time of, is this right
Kharkov,
here? This is Kharkov.
Kharkov. Yeah,
There was a movement attempts for this, but it didn't work out.
yeah, it was suppressed.
But you can see just by voter preferences from 10 years before how it could be suppressed within the realm of reason, because actually only 2/3 of people there are probably ethnic Russians.
Mhm.
I mean, this election result is basically an ethnic result, so people can understand what they're seeing.
Yeah, when the 2014 coup happened and the neo-Nazis, the Russophobes came to power, their very first decree was to ban Russian language, like as a regional. The Russian language had a status of the regional language in Donbass and those in Crimea. Yeah, it had actually status as a official regional language. And the very first decree of the post-Maidan government was to repeal this law, to ban the Russian language as an official regional language. That's what people rose against.
Yes. And then there was another election in uh, then so then we have the conflict. People know some things about that, and we'll come back to the conflict. But then there was an election in 2019
Yeah,
for Zelensky, but in 2015, when Poroshenko was there, because
yeah,
Poroshenko was agreed upon to be in there by the West and others. I
yeah.
suspect also Russians agreed to some extent that Poroshenko was better than, I call him Moby. What was his name?
Turchinov? Turchinov.
Turchinov was his
Yeah.
military commander, but the guy, what was his name? I call him Moby.
Yatsenyuk.
Yatsenyuk. Yeah, Yatsenyuk was
Yatsenyuk.
really
Yeah.
the guy
He was
that
a prime minister.
right, but they wanted him to be president. The U.S. wanted him to be president, not prime minister, but Poroshenko kind of got in there. But that's kind of useful because Poroshenko never officially tried to make a shit into Crimea,
Mm-hmm.
whereas had it been Yatsenyuk, because he's not an oligarch, he's actually retarded. They have compromat on him because he has weird fetishes. He,
Yeah, and he's also a Scientologist, you know.
he's a Scientologist and he's a
Yeah.
bottom, like, right? And if he was the guy, he would have just only followed Washington orders, and he would have sent the army into Crimea at that. I
Yeah.
mean, they would have been obliterated, but it would have been a much bigger conflict.
Oh
Whereas
yeah.
Poroshenko his money is in chocolates, among other things. He's the
Yeah.
chocolate king of Russia, even. And he has
He was. He's not.
he was, but I
Yeah.
mean, he has the Russian chocolate, but he has money in Russian banks. So you can see that there was some angle. Poroshenko, as an oligarch, at least in some messed up way, has some connection to the Ukrainian economy,
Yeah.
because Yatsenyuk is purely a bureaucrat and not an oligarch, which means that he can do anything with no personal outcome, negative outcome. All right. But what Poroshenko did, who he changed his name too. He's not really Poroshenko. His real name is what?
Waltzman. Waltzman.
Waltzman. Yeah, he's a German Jew, right? Jewish
Mm-hmm.
guy from Germany, or maybe Prussian, and
Mm-hmm.
or
Ashkenazi Jew.
yeah, he's an Ashkenazi Jewish gentleman, and his name is Waltzman, which is a German name.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he, like many other Ukrainian leaders that have been pro-West, aren't Ukrainian. Whatever Ukrainian is, I mean, that's the point of this, actually.
Well,
So
Ukraine is essentially a
Timoshenko,
Malarusian.
yes, a Ukrainian is essentially a Malorussian,
Yeah.
except for the Galicians.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Fuck
But
those
everyone
guys.
else actually is. It's like, it's not black or white. It's like a scale of 1 to 10, and if 0 is Galician, and then another vector of 0 is Polish, and then 10 is Russian. Most Ukrainians fall somewhere between 4, 5, and 6, right? And then about 38% of Ukrainians fall between 9 and 10, like Russian. We're Russian, right? But everyone in Ukraine actually speaks Russian unless they pretend not to. Like, everyone in Ukraine speaks Russian unless they have an ideological thing where they, like, if you go to France and they pretend not to speak English, or you go to Hungary and they pretend not to speak English, it's like an ideological thing to pretend not to speak a language that they know. But in Ukraine, it's actually pretending not to speak the language
Russian.
that everyone went to school and learned, and most of the TV and everything was like mixed Russian, Ukrainian. So people can see that there was. But then when we're talking about electronic voting, the Smartmatic, the Diebold machines were brought in by e-voting by Poroshenko.
Yeah.
So then he wins election, like, and where you didn't have electronic voting, you had Ukrainian military at voting polls telling people how to vote or counting the votes, because the election took place within the rubric of a state of emergency. The anti-terrorist operation, so-called, the ATO, was already in effect for that election, if I recall. I'm trying to remember things from 8 years ago, bro. Every little fact is not right. Sorry, but if you look, then
you got everything right so far.
Okay, phew. I'm getting a little senile, but then you look at 2019 election.
Oh yeah, Zelensky, yeah.
Supposedly swept, but this is already Smartmatic. This is already like fake election outcomes. But look, Poroshenko wins in the Galician Nazi zone.
Yeah.
Even though everyone knows that he's an Ashkenazi Jewish guy.
Yeah.
Because Ukrainian Nazis are not that anti-Semitic. They're actually like the Nazis of the Eastern March. They're anti-Slavic, even though they're Slav. So they have some mental condition where they're Slavs, because Galicia was established in the 11th or 12th century by a Rurik king, who was a descendant of only 3 or 4 generations from the first Kievan Rus Russian state in what is now called Ukraine, but is where Russia used to be kind of located as a first central power. That's what people are like, what is this, right? Like, what's going on? Okay, we're going back 1,000 years now for people to kind of, appreciate this. But you can see that also the Israeli triple citizen, dual citizen Igor Kolomoisky
Oh yeah, that
was
oligarch. That
Israeli, and he was backing the Maidan,
the he was baking the Maidan. He was baking the Pravi sector. The
the Pravi
freaking
sector,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But Yadosh, the leader of the Pravi sector, is also part Jewish. So you have Yadosh. It's like why? So people don't understand why Israel was so heavily involved in backing Nazis in Ukraine. They don't understand that. Not all, by the way, many Israelis, I'm talking about Bibi Netanyahu, not what every Israeli thinks. There's Israel's actually like Russia is actually like Russian. But like if you go to Israel, you can speak Russian as much as you speak Hebrew or
English.
Yiddish. You can speak Russian, but yet Bibi Netanyahu's foreign policy, the same guy who betrayed Trump, Bibi Netanyahu,
Yeah,
his foreign policy was to support the Nazis in the red zone there.
yeah,
But that's where they're from, and it's like this little group of people wanted to project their identity across tens of millions of people spanning 1,000 kilometers on a dream that they're going to conquer Moscow someday.
yeah. Nice
I mean,
joke.
I like these David and Goliath stories. Don't get me wrong. When I was a kid, my parents read me The Little Engine That Could, but this is demented. And okay, but so then you can see though that this election, Zelensky was running against Poroshenko, but he had to maintain pro-American policies, but Trump was president and some of those policies had changed in that time, right?
Right.
And also Zelensky had agreement with Trump to investigate Burisma, which was one of the big outcomes of the deep state's managers at the administrative level, like at the level of politics. I mean, you can talk about the banking establishment, the globalists, the cabal, but then you have our elected leaders, or people think like Hillary Clinton invented these policies. She's not smart enough. She's a manager. She's an administrator, so the international banking cabal had a certain vision. That didn't really work out. Then the oligarchs kind of switch around. Kolomoisky, who had backed Poroshenko in 2015, now backs Zelensky.
Yeah.
And he makes a coalition with Rinit Akhmetov, who is a Crimean Tatar Muslim
Yeah.
oligarch.
He's an oligarch. He's probably one of the, if not the richest oligarch of Ukraine.
Yes.
He's even richer than Kolomoisky himself.
And he had some industrial interest in the Donbass.
Yeah.
And he was actually, but he has a lot of investments and ties to Russia too. And so he was actually backing some group of rebels in the Donbass. But then, so you can see how Zelensky can be construed, or was seen at least by Ukrainian oligarchs, as some beginning of an attempt to steer the policy away from a collision course with Russia. Well, none of us are saying that Kolomoisky is good or that
no,
Akhmetov
he's
is good.
no.
We're talking about self-interest. And sometimes self-interest makes you do things that aren't crazy, right? Because we talked about with Yatsenyuk, who's not an oligarch, the Americans really wanted him. That was the skinny bald guy with the glasses, right?
Yeah.
They really wanted him because he had no interest in the outcome of Ukraine. He just wants, to make sure no one sees his hard drive with all the kitty snuff videos on them, to be frank.
Oh, kitty. Oh, shit.
So that's the compromat on Yatsenyuk is that he's a pedophile. So the fact that he's gay, like in the public eye, some people don't like that, but other people are like, whatever floats your boat. That's not really the
Oh.
problem. That's not the compromat. It's that he's a pedophile. So, and he didn't have billions of dollars tied up in the outcome of Ukraine. All these other oligarchs in one way or the other actually do. But then they got tied up in their own collapsed economy, their own bad relationship with Russia, which involves Gazprom and Naftogaz and energy pipelines, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they're
Yes.
tied up in it. They're entanglements. These entanglements keep you from acting autonomously and rationally. Tell us, this election looks like Zelensky is popular, even in Malorossiya in the east, but maybe that's not the case. Can you break that down for us? Why is that from a fake election outcome? They had e-voting, or did people see maybe he's the lesser of two evils, or what?
I think that actually people saw him as not see they saw him as the lesser of two evils. Like people were ready to vote for anyone, but not for Poroshenko. Well, except for this like neo-Nazi like region in the west of Ukraine. So I think people were just too fed up with Poroshenko and they wanted to vote for someone else. Even though I wouldn't, even if you ask me, I would never in a million years vote for a comedian who plays grand piano with his ding dong. I would never do
That's
that.
one of his sketches, so people know that's the
Yeah,
reference.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. When Zelensky was a comedian, he had a sketch like playing a grand piano with his ding dong.
yeah,
I would never vote for such person. But I think people were just too fed up.
yeah.
That's
So
what.
then, but when you look at this,
Yeah.
this has been what the 38% of Ukrainians who, if Kiev is going to keep the constitutional changes, then they don't want to be part of Ukraine. And it would look like this.
Oh.
But if you compare these two maps, the election
Yeah.
results and
Yeah.
what people want, you can see that it's almost the exact same.
Yeah.
So this
Almost.
is, Americans have so much to learn from this in fighting against the deep state because of the attempts to make a civil war. And that was called the Transition Integrity Project. And you can see that these same Sorosian plans have already been done to countries. I live in one, Yugoslavia. It used to be Serbia, Croatia, Slovenia, Macedonia, Montenegro. Did I say Croatia?
Croatia, yeah.
Yeah. Bosnia, Herzegovina. And then Clinton. So this is like these usual suspects. They keep coming up again.
Yeah,
Then
Clinton
comes in and finances a war and had Saudi and Iranian weapons coming through Croatia. This was written about and covered.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
even
by
the
the
New
way,
York Times exposed it because they used to have like 3 or 4 people who got to write things that were true back 30 years ago.
yeah. Oh, by the way, Joaquin, sorry for interrupting you. Since you brought up Croatia, like when I heard first when Croatian president, I believe his name is Zoran, but his last name is Milanovic. No.
Mm-hmm.
So Croatian President Zoran Milanovic, he said that no, actually Croatia will not send its troops to fight Russia in Ukraine, and he said that Croatia is not going to participate in this conflict and is not going to help Ukraine, although Croatia is a part of NATO, and Croatia is like like Croatian nationalists are very anti-Serbian, anti-Orthodox people. Yeah, but Zoran, I was pleasantly
Croatian nationalists are pretty anti-Russia, and Croatian nationalists volunteered on the in the volunteer battalions and the mercenary forces in the 2014 war in neo-Nazi brigades.
Didn't know that. Thank you. But anyway, I was actually pleasantly surprised that Croatia refused to participate. But maybe you know there are other reasons that people don't really know? Undercover reasons?
Yes. Because this is so funny how this worked out.
Mm-hmm.
So even though people think that there was an Iron Curtain, during the Khrushchev years, the Soviet Union began to export high amounts of gas to Europe.
Yeah.
So even though people think about the MacArthur plan of the US to rebuild Europe, it wasn't possible without the fuel to do that from the Soviet Union. So actually, this doesn't go back to the 90s. This goes back to the 50s and 60s. So European development has been based on this. Now, it's very interesting, the politics about this, because there's so many layers and there's apparent contradictions and stupidities that arise. For example, there's a big information war that goes back 50 years, and a war on consciousness and how people understand new technologies. Okay. And when Yeltsin was the president of the Russian Federation, the West convinced him that Russia needed to sell its gas for as cheap as possible, because if the gas was more expensive, then it would only encourage development of alternatives like wind, solar, green, maybe even some like Tesla technology, but this is the future. Like, we're going to get away from gas. And because of people like Rockefeller going back 100 years, people have this false idea that there's a limited amount, like in the practical sense. Of course, there's a limited amount because the planet Earth is a finite, physical object, but Earth is very big, and we've only gone however deep, like 8 miles or something. It's deep, right? So we don't know that there's a limit or not to gasoline, to oil, but they convinced the world that there is in the West. So then you think, okay, well, countries like France and Germany can build nuclear, right? They can build nuclear plants, and then they can offset the reliance on Soviet, then Russian gas by going nuclear. But the green movement in the anti-nuclear movement in the 80s and 90s made that impossible. And how that worked, because the same forces that against Russia also were against Europe having any kind of sane energy plan. It's almost as if the same forces that caused World War I that devastated Europe and World War II that devastated Europe are trying to make a World War III that devastates Europe. It almost sounds like that. I mean, it's the same pattern, and it's pushing Europe on a collision course where it doesn't have access to energy that it needs to develop its own economy. It isn't allowed to develop nuclear because that's not green. There's no way that there's no process or system even to transform liquefied natural gas that comes from the US. There's no efficient way to transit it. Like, you don't put it on boats and then ship boats. Like, the way that you logically transfer gas is through pipelines.
Yeah.
Low. You don't.
It's much cheaper.
Yeah, it's much cheaper, and it just doesn't make sense to take natural gas from the US. Like, the US could be energy independent from its own liquefied natural gas.
Natural gas, shale gas.
Yeah.
Fracking.
Yeah, LNG. But in Europe, to Germany, the closest liquid natural gas to transform it into usable natural gas is in Poland. Okay. And Germany is not going to be reliant on Poland. So that is a crazy angle. We want to just open people's eyes to the complexities of the energy geopolitics and how crazy the European course has been, because the US deep state and the international banking cabal seems bent actually on destroying Europe. Like they want to destroy Russia, but they also want to destroy Europe, because that's what happened in World War II. Russia was destroyed. I mean, they
Europe was
won, but
absolutely destroyed.
won the victory like that. Like, who needs victories, right? Like, they won, but Europe lost, but both countries were destroyed. Both regions
Yeah,
were destroyed, right? And
yeah,
who then took over the world were not American people, but the American deep state.
yeah.
Yeah. And because of that, American companies grew much more powerful,
Hmm.
which undermined American balance of class power in the US. So now Americans can't even fight their own oligarchs because those oligarchs have an empire.
Yeah,
So this is actually happening now as part of a cleanup operation to remove American oligarch power from Ukraine. But we can see this little map here.
yeah.
I mean, this is not an official map. Clearly, everyone can see this is fan fiction, but
Absolutely.
this is in the minds of, you know, about 70 or 80% of the populations of these regions, to be fair.
And in my mind too.
And in your mind too.
Yeah,
So tell me now,
yeah. I hear you.
people want to know,
Mm-hmm.
like, today is February 27th, Sunday.
Yeah, 27 Sunday. Yeah,
Yeah,
February
people want to
27.
know, like, because there's so many mixed reports, nothing makes
Oh
sense.
yeah,
But you're
absolutely.
getting the news. You're looking at Ukrainian news, which is in
Yeah.
Russian, by the way, people, and you're looking at Russian news.
Mm-hmm.
And are there Russian forces in Kiev? Or what are they? Are they focusing mostly on securing Kharkov? If they secure, this is a four-part question. If they secure Kharkov, are they going to do a referendum there, or are they trying to put pressure on Kiev to change the constitution? Like, there's many different possible ways that Russia can help fix Ukraine.
You know, the reports sometimes contradict each other. I mean, I watch the news and I read different Telegram channels, but I've never seen any Russian troops yet entering Kiev. They are surrounding Kiev, and the Russian troops have entered Kharkov. There are fights there are skirmishes for Kharkov right now, but I don't think they have already entered Kiev. They are surrounding Kiev, but I don't think they have already entered it. But I might be wrong. Maybe I need to update my information. But I haven't yet heard of them entering Kiev.
Okay.
But there are
But I
the
mean,
new.
but would there look like there
Mhm.
were recon units that entered Kiev or drove through Kiev?
Mhm.
I mean, it looked like, but we don't know. I'm just saying, because
Yeah.
the reports are so conflicting, but it looked like there were, platoons, we call them platoons, of, recon that were in Kiev that were Russian, but then are not obviously conducting operations in terms of combat operations there. They're conducting recon operations, if that was true. But I mean, it looked like what we saw. But, unless you can actually geolocate, the streets, it's hard to tell.
Yeah. Like I'm reading right now is that there are there is street combat, like urban combat in Kharkov right now. The Russian troops are taking Kharkov, but I haven't yet heard the reports of them taking Kiev.
Right. Of course, yeah, I'm not under the impression that
Mhm.
that's the what the question is, but rather, if there's a Russian presence. I know that there was fighting over some airports around Kiev.
Yeah, but I think there are like Russian like reconnaissance intelligence troops, like spies. I mean, in Kiev.
Did you see the Russian propaganda from REI Novosti
Uh, yes, I've seen.
about how they did Chernobyl? That it's like Ukrainian Nadzguardia and Russian Spetsnaz working together, like
Oh yeah, I've seen that. I've
we're
seen
on the
that.
same side there.
Yeah, I seen it on my TV, like TV news, that they are like working together. Like I don't know how true is that, but I've seen the footages of Ukrainian and Russian like standing together, Ukrainian Russian troops standing together in at Chernobyl, and it was like a crucial part of the operation to get control of the Chernobyl, because you know some of those nationalists are really like crazy fucked up in the head people. They could have organized a nuclear provocation, some sort of like a
False
dirty,
flag event,
yeah, false
or
flag
blown up
event.
the
Yeah, yeah,
facility and cause
absolutely.
nuclear
Yeah,
waste to,
nuclear meltdown or
yeah,
something like that. Yeah.
yeah,
So getting control of Chernobyl was a crucial part of the operation.
right. And but of course, from the military tactical, but in the information war sphere, they're showing Ukrainians like, not like, you can surrender and keep your guns actually and just join us. That's actually what you saw in this propaganda piece, which is
Yeah,
that you
yeah.
can surrender, but you can
Keep your.
also just join our command. We're
Mm-hmm.
going to do this together.
Mm-hmm.
In the 2014 conflict, for people who don't know, on paper, Ukraine had the largest standing Europe of any country west of Russia, with a
Mm-hmm.
reported 225,000 active duty,
Mm-hmm.
enlisted rather, and active duty, or including reserves that could be called up but were enlisted. So you have then, but then when the conflict started, like actually the first waves of Ukrainian forces sent into the Donbass did switch sides, or they surrendered, and as individuals they were offered like to join the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And you saw there was whole instances in 2014, in right at the beginning, in the end of February, of like tanks turning over, like handing, like Ukrainians driving to the front like they're going to fight, but then when they got there, they actually intentionally went to the front to surrender, and they gave all these tanks to the Donbass forces.
Yeah, and because where do you think the Donbass forces got all their tanks? Like I know some were sent by Russia covertly, like secretly, but we couldn't send more tanks on a large scale because you know the U.S. satellites are
Satellite can
watching.
capture all that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the clearly, I mean, I wrote about this, how Russia was able to utilize information war and create to manipulate Baudrillardian hyperreality, like how media creates a perception of reality that makes you think that you know what's going on as if you were there, even though you're not there.
Oh, you mentioned the last name Baudrillard. I forgot his first name. So I think that the modern Western media journalists, they are not actually journalists. They are some sort of hyper reality makers now.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. They're storytellers.
Storytellers, yeah, not
Yeah,
journalists.
right, right. And you know, the truth is that originally journalism is storytelling, but there used to be so many different competing newspapers that people would read the ones that spoke to their hearts and their interests, and that was called journalism. But over the period between the Gilded Age, the 1890s and 1920s, the big monopolies rolled in and took over. And this whole concept of professional journalism or objective journalism is actually an American creation that the Supreme Court actually had to weigh on this because of anti-monopoly laws in the US. And ultimately it was like, well, they created this concept called objective journalism, which is a lie, because
Mm-hmm.
all journalism is subjective, right? I mean, even if you're pointing a camera somewhere
Mm-hmm.
and you're showing something, by doing that, you're not showing what's everything on all other sides behind you, you
Mm-hmm.
see? So, and there's no way that a journalist can begin to talk about a subject without it being a reflection of their own education and who they talk to or who they work for, right? So subjective journalism is actually normal. We shouldn't reject, we should not, my point is we should not expect objective journalism. There's actually no such thing. What we should be is honest about what the subjectivity is based in, and there should be competition between narratives. There should be competition between journalism, not monopolies. That's our experience from America anyway. I don't know about you Ruskies, but where I come from, we don't like monopolies on information. So and journalism is a joke now because of that. And
Okay, but you see, my friend, that I agree with you that there is no such thing as like 100% objective and unbiased independent journalism, because journalists work for someone. Even I don't think maybe even freelance journalists cannot be completely like 100% unbiased. But the thing is, when I argue with Americans or West Europeans, they say, oh, but our journalism is independent, and your journalism is all propaganda, state-run propaganda. We can't trust your media. Shut the fuck up.
Right. Yeah, it's a lie, because in the US, they just have the simulation of independent journalism, but it's a lie. And people can say, oh, but the government doesn't control it. It's controlled by corporations. And it's like, but yeah, fucko, but the corporations also control the government. So America is actually a corporate state.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the issue in America, is a corporate state. I mean, people say, oh, the government doesn't control CNN. It's like, yeah, but CNN controls the outcome of government because the people who own CNN own the banks. Mm-hmm. So we live in a bankers society.
Yeah, we know that RT, Russia Today, well, it is funded by the Kremlin, by the Russian state.
But openly.
And that openly, it doesn't hide that it is funded by the Kremlin, right, by the Russian state.
Right.
But dude, does the very fact that it is being run by Russian state just completely makes it like, it makes information, it promotes illegitimate, like if it's run by Russian state, it's a lie. That's what many Russophobes think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's more accurate, it's more honest, because well, this reflects the Russian state interest as understood by the Russian state, whereas like CNN or MSNBC or Fox, they pretend to be independent of interests, special interests or corporate interests, but they just they're not. So
yeah, at least RT, Sputnik, they are more honest about who are they working for.
That's the point. That's the point. But yeah, so we don't have a good sense in the fog of war. I did this with Kirby the other day.
Tim Kirby,
him. Yeah, you know him.
Yeah. I know him. I don't know him personally, but I've heard. Yeah, I love his content, and he's a great guy. He's American, but he lives in Russia, like in Moscow. Yeah.
Yes, he does.
And if you know him, like you have constant contact with him, yeah.
Yeah.
Could you like show us this video in my channel? Maybe he's interested to host or to do a video with me as well.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, yeah, we'll set that up.
Yeah,
I want to share. I can definitely commit to that. I'll talk.
Thank
to
you.
him. Okay.
Thank you.
Look. So let's look at this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Share.
Okay. So.
Oh yeah.
All right. Now. This is
a Russian truck
in Kharkov.
Kharkov, yeah.
So
it is Russian.
Yeah, well, we try to say, can you see the markings? Like, is this old footage from 2014 that's being recycled, or can you see a Z on that truck there?
Can't really see because of that.
Look on the door on the front. You see that white Z?
Yeah, I see the Z. Yeah, Z.
Yeah, that means that this is from now.
From now, yeah.
It's a good way to tell.
Yeah.
And then someone would have to know this intersection to confirm that this was actually in Kupiansk. But anyone there would know. The thing is that I saw an explosion video on this channel. I'm not trying to debunk or delegitimize. I'm just critical of all information. I'm critical, and I know that wrong stuff gets in all the information lines. It doesn't matter which side you're talking about.
Yeah, you know, this quote is attributed to Kipling, but the first casualty of the war is truth. Is the truth. Truth is always the first casualty of war.
Yeah, Rudyard Kipling. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see here.
Oh, that's disturbing.
Killed soldiers of the armed forces of Ukraine, Southwest.
Vasilkov. Oh, Vasilkov.
Yeah.
The fights are in the suburbs of Kiev, but I don't think Kiev has not been taken yet.
But there's fighting maybe in the suburbs of Kiev.
Yeah, suburbs of Kiev, yeah.
See, that's pretty crazy if true. But the thing is that these photos, just to me, the quality looks like those 5 megabyte,
5
cell phone
megapixel
cameras that people had in Russia like 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And this could be from, honestly, this
2014.
2014.
Yeah.
Is the truth. We just don't know.
Like,
Especially when it looks like this.
Yeah.
That's so unclear.
Yeah, very unclear. Like the video, like one girl was peddling on YouTube when a jet strikes a residential area with a missile, and they say it's Russian jet bombing the civilian like Kiev. I said, no, it's actually recycled video from 2014 when the Ukrainian MiG-29 was like attacking, launching missile on Donbass.
Yes. Lukashenko believes Russia will not back down from its plans for Ukraine.
Well, as far as I know, Lukashenko supports the operation, and
yes,
yeah, but I don't think that there will be negotiations. Like Russia will fight till the end. I think that the Ukraine refused to negotiate.
Right. I mean, they say that because they have to say that, but will they?
You mean, I think they will never negotiate. Like Zelensky is somewhere in his bunker. I don't know. And
I read a report that he fled to Lviv.
Oh, I also heard that report, but it's also unclear. Maybe he's somewhere in Kiev, in his bunker. Maybe he's in Lvov. It's also unclear. It's not been confirmed yet. You know, there is going to be a shitstorm of fakes and misinformation, and it's very hard to know where's the truth and where's the lie.
Right.
Yeah.
But we try to find the ones that are real, so we have some sense. So this is when the Russian armed forces broke through the defense in Kharkov. They claim, so the video could be correct.
Yeah.
But and it could be from today or yesterday, so it can be a true video, but the subtitle or the text could be wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe this is before they took Kharkov, or maybe Kharkov is not taken. Like, shouldn't we see how they normally did it, like in 2014, how they go to the city hall and they take the Ukraine coat of arms off of the building and they put on like the
Russian
Kharkov one? Well, it would be Kharkov, the Soviet era coat of arms from Kharkov is normally what you would see in my experience with this.
This is looks like a Mi-24 Hind. Like Hind is a Niton reported name, but we call this helicopter Crocodile. It looks like it's firing rockets or missiles, or no, it's probably rockets. It's something. I don't see it what it's firing, and it's like it's circling around. It could be the Kiev region. It could be Kharkiv. I don't know. It's hard to tell from this video, but it's definitely a helicopter. It's firing rockets.
The claim is that this is in the Kiev region. By the way, folks, just so you see, this building in the foreground is not a casualty of war. That's how buildings look in this part of the world where I live too, here in the Balkans. Like, buildings don't get finished, or even when people finish their buildings.
Yes, it is an unfinished construction site.
But being unfinished like that is like can go on for like 30 years.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
It sucks when you live next to somebody who doesn't finish their house and it looks like this for the whole time you live there. It's kind of a depressing eyesore. Let's see. Multi-purpose helicopters fire unguided aircraft missiles at the facilities of the armed forces of Ukraine in the Kiev region. Well, that's what they claim.
That's what they claim. It's actually it's too far away. I see the heli circling around, but it's oh yeah, it is a Mi-8 AMT-SH.
Yep. And the quality of this, you see how it has a very high resolution.
Yeah.
And see how it has a little bit of camera shake control, a little bit like.
Probably the cameraman is running or something like that.
It's, probably cell phone or something, or.
Oh yeah, I see the helicopter firing rockets.
Yeah, but this looks like today. I mean, this looks contemporary. It doesn't look like.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So it's engaged there. Ooh, look at that.
Yeah.
So that's a Russian Mi-8 AMT-SH.
Yeah. It looks very much like that.
And you call that what do you call that?
Mi-8 AMT-SH, or we call it like, I don't know, Terminator.
Yeah. What's the NATO designation for that one?
The NATO designation for Mi-8 is HIP, but I don't know, maybe this particular modification they a little bit different, but the common NATO name for Mi-8 is HIP, if I remember it correctly.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll take your word for it, but we can look right now. HIP is reporting name. NATO reporting name is HIP. Yeah. Actually, they call all of the Mi copters HIP. But also the Mi-17 is called HIP and everything, according to Wikipedia, which I'm no genius, just,
Well, Mi-17 is just like a little bit heavy upgraded, like modification of the Mi-8.
Okay.
Okay.
Russian military moving around Kharkiv. It's weird. I noticed that this channel is using all of the Ukrainian spellings. Like instead of Kiev, it's Kyiv. Instead of
Kharkov, it's Kharkiv.
Yeah. It's weird.
Instead of Lvov, it's Lviv.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot. It's weird. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's so they don't get their channel taken off.
I don't know.
But okay. So here's another. I want people to pay. A source in the Russian Defense Ministry said
that the Special Operation Forces of Russian Federation received updated plans for the locations of Ukrainian ZKPs, alternative command posts. Yeah, their
equipment, schemes of communication channels, as well as lists of persons admitted to them, including from among high-ranking politicians and the military of Ukraine. In the coming hours, it is planned to strike at those indicated objects. So they're going to do precision strikes to take out people, politicians,
officers, generals. Yeah. And it's probably going to be like with cruise missiles, like the Caliber cruise missiles, or maybe some of the, I don't exactly remember the designations, but some of the cruise missiles launched from strategic bombers like Tu-160. Had X-32 or X-52. I don't exactly remember the designation of the cruise missiles launched from.
Caliber missiles not precise enough, or?
I think they are precise enough, but the Caliber is a naval-based cruise missile. I'm talking about the Air Force-based cruise missiles.
Oh, you think that they're gonna hit them from
the air? Yeah, because the Ukrainian air defense has been destroyed in the first 3 hours of the war.
Yeah, yes. I mean, it's the Western media is basically trying to promote some view that because Russia is conducting this as a humanitarian operation, which means that they're restraining their
Mhm.
operations. They're not trying to hit any civilian areas. They're not trying to destroy critical infrastructure, which they cannot quickly replace. What do I mean by that? Well, they might take out gas storage and blow up energy storage because that
Mhm.
cripples Ukraine today and forces the government to capitulate today. But energy is something Russia has lots of. They can refill those things instantly
Yeah.
within a day, but you're not seeing an attempt to destroy water purification, housing, industrial facilities. Russia intends for this country to have an independent policy, which, by the way, people don't understand this part because it's nuanced, but simple and straightforward. Okay. When Ukraine has truly independent policy, it leans towards Russia because of the natural, historical, cultural, technological, the geographical, economic ties. I mean,
Yeah.
for a long time, they have uh, common agreements. You have power
Mhm.
plants, electricity in Rostov, you
Mhm.
know, people in Ukraine were using energy
Mhm.
from parts of Russia.
Mhm.
Sewage lines even or roads are interdependent. So this idea that these are truly different countries is inaccurate. It's Kuchmaism in Ukraine and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
CNN in the West that promotes this view. But these are long integrated countries. So why
Mhm.
and Russia is trying to industrialize. They're trying to reindustrialize, and they intend for Ukraine to be an important partner.
Mhm.
Now,
Yeah.
I'm not naive or idealistic, even though over its own natural course, Ukraine would be in the Russian sphere. Russia's going to make sure that they're going to put people in there that hurry that up. I mean, that's the truth.
That's the truth, yeah. And ideally, Joaquin,
Yeah.
right now, in the perspective of the the in the perspective of the recent five, like in the coming 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
I would like Ukraine to join the CSTO alliance, to
Mm-hmm.
join the EU, Eurasian Economic Union,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe in a more like further perspective, like the coming 10 years, I would love Ukraine to join the union state with Russia and Belarus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's talks
Yeah.
for Serbia to join the Union State too.
Hmm. But
So
ideally, what I want, like the ultimate goal, is to incorporate Ukraine, at least the Malorossiya, the Malorossian region, into the Russian Federation itself. I think that's the ultimate goal. I'm not sure about Galician, like the Western, like majority neo-Nazi regions. I'm not sure what to do with those regions, but I think my ultimate goal is to see that at least the Malorossian regions be getting incorporated into the Russian Federation.
yes, look
Hmm.
at this. This is actually the news right
Hmm.
now. Well, this is 11. This is from 11 a.m.
Hmm.
Belgrade, which would have been 1 o'clock
Moscow.
your time.
Yeah.
And so they're saying, and basically Russia said, let's meet, let's talk in Minsk. That's
Hmm.
where they met before for the Minsk agreement 8 years ago.
Hmm.
Um, because Zelensky said, I want to talk. I want to say one thing over here to Western media that I'm like holding up this fight, but in reality, like I want to talk, but I don't want to talk because the people who pay my salaries or are holding a gun to my head don't want me to talk, but I
Yeah.
need to talk so that you slow down the attack so that I can then go back to the Western press and say, we're slowing down the attack. Well,
Hmm.
yeah, you're slowing down the attack by pretending to want
Hmm.
to ceasefire or surrender. Like that's going to get a lot of people killed, because we call that the boy who cried wolf. I mean, if you're going to say like over and over, we want to talk, and you use, like, if guys come out, like, let's say, just to break it down so we understand, you have two groups shooting, and one guy starts to hold up the white flag. But then when you're saying like, okay, well then come out and surrender, and they just keep holding up the white flag, but not coming out and dropping their guns. The reason they're holding up the white flag is they're hoping that reinforcements will come before they really have to surrender. That's actually what's happening right now. So you have this delegation is in Minsk. Yeah, this is, I guess, in Gomel, Homel, which is another, not Minsk, but in Belarus.
In Belarus, yeah.
Oh, it is in Belarus. It's the Gomel.
Yes.
Homel is actually the government. Yeah, the government building, is that the parliament, the Homel?
Yeah.
So yeah, then they're going to be there for 2 more hours at the time that we're recording right now. Or actually, no, that's it. Time is up.
Yeah, time is up.
So this is another refusal to discuss. They're saying the entire responsibility for further development of Ukraine will lie with the current government of Ukraine. Yeah, that's... Media showed footage of armed forces of Ukraine voluntarily laying down their arms.
Yeah.
That's propaganda. I mean, it's true, but it's,
it's shown for the propaganda purposes.
Yes. There's actually, it's against Geneva to show faces of people who surrender, unless, I guess, maybe there's consenting. I don't know how that. I don't think that's correct. Maybe they're having them wear the COVID masks to get around the Geneva Convention on showing the faces of
yeah. I know it's against the Geneva Convention, and Russia is very
strict about it.
Yeah,
because they get watchdog so much about it by the West that they actually do the cleanest thing. It's very similar to Trump, actually, with all of the investigations on Trump, with everything on his taxes, with everything on all of his dealings with Russia collusion hoax, right? The whole thing, when at the end of it, it's like, oh my God, Trump is the cleanest politician to have ever been president.
Oh, by the way, I heard that Trump said that he actually approves the recognition of the republics, and said Putin did a brilliant move and blah blah blah. Haven't you heard that?
I know that he said it's brilliant, and I know my thesis is that the foreign policy of the U.S. right now is the result of everything that Trump did. So it's and I don't think that Biden has an independent foreign policy, and I think that the people who backed Trump to do this change of foreign policy, that is still, there was an agreement made. There could have been a bloodbath or bigger crisis in the U.S., and then they would have blamed things happening now that had to happen now on Trump. There's a lot of things that it makes sense for Trump. Why should Trump take responsibility for things caused by the global bankers that he can't control? He could have been president now if he could have executed a plan, done a state of emergency, whatever, declared the elections null and void. There's a lot of things he could have done. Americans know about this, but the main thing is that whether Afghanistan or what you're seeing now in Russia, Trump approves of it, and these are the plans he wanted to see happen, even though he can't directly say it because of where consciousness is at, and it's a whole other ball of wax. But if you understand, this is not like in my mind, okay? If you understand the real relationships that existed between Manafort and Akhmetov, and how what the U.S.-Ukraine business relationships were in 2013, okay? They were working with Yanukovych. They were working with that structure. It was actually a junta within the U.S. that messed up things that both Russia and the U.S. were actually okay with. No one was like ecstatic about it, but it was a compromise from, even after the Color Revolution in 2004, Ukraine was still within the realm of sanity until the coup, the Maidan in 14. What do you hear? What's going on? What's with Russian reactions about airports are not going to take Russian planes and stuff?
Well, Russia does like the mirror response, mirroring the measures.
Yes.
Like Russia has closed for. Russia has closed its airport for certain states like Bulgaria, the Baltics, and I don't know the full list of the states, but Russia is responding in a mirror way. With a mirror.
And have you heard reports that Turkey now will be closing the Bosphorus?
Oh, I haven't heard about
I don't,
the.
it's that's what
At
fake news
first,
is
I
reporting.
at first I heard that the Erdogan refused to close the
I
Bosphorus.
heard that, yeah.
Yeah, but now I heard that he's about to close the Bosphorus. The reports are sometimes really contradict. They are really contradicting each other.
Yeah, they are. Yes, it's information war.
Yeah.
It's the fog of information war. Because Erdogan might have agreed to something which is not actually against the first thing he said, but he might have agreed to some small thing which is not against the first thing he said. Um, but then media takes it to mean that, and that changes people's perceptions. Similar to Germany providing like 500 stingers and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But previously they said they wouldn't be assisting
Oh yeah,
Ukraine.
yeah. They said that. Yeah.
Yeah, but those aren't actually contradictory statements because Germany can send those to friendly countries, NATO countries, or to countries they have treaties with for that, and that's what they did. And then those countries are going to send it to Ukraine. So it's actually going to go through a third party. I think it's one
Oh
of
yeah,
the
yeah.
Scandinavian countries. Forgive my ignorance. I wasn't sure if it was Sweden or Finland, but it was going to come through Scandinavia and then to Ukraine. So it's
Mm-hmm.
actually like some part of truth, but actually not against the first statement.
Mm-hmm.
And also 500 stingers is not going to make any difference in this conflict. So people who understand like that, it
Yeah.
means nothing.
I mean, the Stinger cannot shoot down a caliber cruise missile.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the these attack helicopters have computer automated like sensors to shoot down missiles going towards it.
Yeah, they have like electronic warfare
Yeah.
capabilities. They have like flares and the electronic warfare capabilities to misdirect the missile, and it just will fall somewhere, but it won't hit the plane or helicopter. Misguide the missile. Yeah, fighting in on Pavlovo Pole in Kharkov. Pavlovo Pole. Oh, Pole field. Pavlova field. Pole, it's not pole, like it's pole, a field in Russian. Yeah, I see the smoke. Pavlova. Uh-huh. Where is the Z letter? Irpень. Oh, it's near Kiev. It's there. Mm-hmm. They're evacuating the wounded or the casualties. Don't see. Uh, oh, I see these guys are either dead or severely wounded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Solntsevka, west of Solntsevka. It's near
Solon-
near Kharkov somewhere. I don't know. Somewhere near Kharkov. And this guy is serviceman of the MTR and other units of Russian armed forces, as well as Ramzan. Oh, by the way, speaking of, did you know that Kadyrov, the leader of Chechnya, said he will send his like Chechen brigade to?
Oh, we've been following that very carefully,
Yeah.
very closely. We know I've been showing people that for a few days now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We showed the footage of the Chechen brigade and everything, all in
Mm-hmm.
black,
Yeah.
very spiffy, very aesthetic.
Yeah.
Um, oh
And
look, Tesla lost 100 billion.
uh-huh. Elon Musk and his freaking
Yeah. So do people know that SpaceX relies on Russian rockets?
Russian rocket engines,
Yeah, that's what you're
basic.
seeing here. That's why it's
Yeah.
being reported. So people think, see, see, I don't know what happened in the 60s. All I know is that somehow the US lost the technology to get to the moon.
Yeah.
And and for some reason, the US also can't make rockets that can actually even get into near Earth orbit.
Mm-hmm. How did they lose this technology?
Yeah, I mean, it makes you wonder if they ever had it.
Yeah,
Frankly,
but
I mean, you know, how do you lose something like that?
the moon landing hoax, I think, is a subject for a separate video.
Yeah, but Tesla is reliant. The point is that Tesla is reliant on Russian rockets. So when the sanctions against Russian aerospace industry
Mm-hmm.
was announced, you see,
Yeah,
and Tesla is saying publicly that he's for Ukraine.
Elon Musk said that.
Yeah,
Oh, probably because Ukraine actually had a project to build Hyperloop in Ukraine. Have you
right.
heard?
Yes, but then Biden, who who also has interest in Ukraine from
Mm-hmm.
Burisma and more.
Mm-hmm.
Burisma is just one angle of this, by the way.
Yeah.
There's also Marina Abramovich was there, and she's
Mm-hmm.
close with Biden. And what was she doing in Ukraine except for involved in human trafficking or building a cult or whatever she does? Then you have, yes, more on this. SWIFT is how banks transfer money between countries.
Oh yeah, and they threatened to cut Russia off SWIFT. Like, but if you do that, how is Europe gonna pay for Russian gas?
It's just not gonna happen.
Oh, absolutely, it's not. But can they selectively like cut some Russian banks from SWIFT selectively, not the whole country?
They can put sanctions on those banks,
Yeah.
but all that means is that then people will just transfer from bank to bank or from interest to interest. It's the EU is actually against it.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're saying, look, EU foreign minister today will adopt tough new
Sanctions.
sanctions against Russia, including disconnecting a number of Russian banks from SWIFT.
Mm-hmm.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, good luck with that.
It's
As if I'm sorry for interrupting, but as I said in my previous videos and in the video response to that guy, like what he's called, what if I said are a double-edged sword. So yeah, it can hurt Russia.
well, no, it's Europe sanctioning itself
Yeah, absolutely. They shoot themselves in the leg.
in the face. It's crazy.
Oh,
So look at this. The time announced by the Russian delegation to wait for negotiations with Ukraine in Homel has
has
expired.
expired.
Clearly, Kiev does not want to negotiate. They want this to go on.
Yeah.
You know, money talks
Bullshit
and
work.
money and bullshit walks. And I can easily see any number of Russians, oligarchs or the state able to counter bribe Zelensky or, what will it cost? I mean, why not? Or offer Kolomoisky or Akhmetov further investment opportunities in Russia. Why not? They actually have plans to grow the economy. That's one thing that many Westerners don't understand is that The Western economy is not based on growth. The
Mm-hmm.
value of the currency bears no relation to real GDP. You have a debt to GDP ratios, which are in fictional hyperspace of non-reality. So it's like, it means nothing to be a billionaire in a fictional economy. Only when the illusion, the vapors, the smoke still in the room. But once that clears out, you have, I'm very concerned really that the deep state and the global bankers are trying to really force Europe into just to self-destruct, or to push it onto some kind of war path with Russia. You know, I'm a realist, and despite whatever Beijing says about supporting Russia, ultimately I can see, you know, any number of things happening.
Well, Beijing said, at least the Beijing like foreign ministry said
Foreign
it supports,
ministry.
yeah, it supports Russia. But speaking of Beijing, I was just about to ask you about the Beijing, but not the support, but about the Taiwan issue. Can Beijing try to take Taiwan under the guise of this Ukraine-Russia war? Like, while the Western media propaganda machine is focused like exclusively on Russia, can China actually to make an attempt to take Taiwan back into China?
Well, yes, but it would be not because the media or the publics are focused elsewhere, but it would be because if it would not be now, I don't think, but I could be wrong. Like I would have to sit in a room with other people with, and to bounce ideas off. I understand mechanics, but I'm not strong on the facts, the relationships, but so people understand. People want Taiwan to be free, then they should want the people who call themselves Taiwanese, like from China, to leave the Isle of Formosa, to leave Taiwan, because they invaded Taiwan. So that's what people don't understand. Like Taiwan there was a civil war in China, and the nationalist government fled for Taiwan. So they had to take Taiwan from indigenous, actual Taiwanese people and set up a government in exile called the Republic of China.
Yeah,
okay, not the People's Republic of China. Yeah, the Kuomintang established a government in Taiwan, but so they're actually the occupiers of Taiwan. But so the Chinese do occupy Taiwan. Just the Chinese who lost the Chinese Civil War went to Taiwan. But China has a one China policy.
Yeah.
And it's not based on military occupation, but based on market growth. They use capitalism and market and corporatism, frankly, to monopolize and corner markets and integrate. Taiwan is already very integrated into mainland China. So that these are not separate entities. You know, Hong Kong is not a separate island somewhere. It's actually just like a port city on mainland China.
Yeah, it is.
No, that's not a separate country at all. It'd be like saying like San Francisco is separate from the US. It's like crazy talk. It's like it's a city. It's a city on the mainland. It's just a port city on the mainland. That's Hong Kong. And Taiwan is just a tiny little island off the mainland. And it's always been it's been integrated into Chinese structures since like the 80s or 70s. It's just, Republic of China lost its recognition in the UN like in 76 or around there, and recognized PRC, mainland China. But China's not a communist country. I mean, they're ruled by a communist party, but it's like a state capitalist economy. It's not that different from many other countries in the world. They're just very big and, wealthy, industrious. I'm not a fan of censorship or social credit, but, I'm also not living in China. So whatever they got to figure out, they got to figure out.
Okay.
Dude,
Joaquin, I'm very like, should I say optimistic towards China, because I think China knows when the cabal, if cabal defeats Russia, that China is next. I think that's why they have to support Russia. What can you say on that?
Yeah. Uh, before XJP, before Xi Jinping,
Mm-hmm.
China was going to be on a collision course with the world
Mm-hmm.
because their economic model was entirely export and based on low wages.
Mm-hmm.
But the
Low
natural
wage labor.
low wage labor and export economy, but that's not stable internally because then the Chinese oligarchy has disproportionate power from the lower classes, which means that the financial interests of the oligarchy will ultimately determine the foreign policy of China, which would be an expansionist model, which will lead it towards collision with other powers.
Mm-hmm.
And they won't be able to control that because all power breaks down to individuals that have their own interests. It's hard to coordinate that. So it's a collision course with other countries.
Mm-hmm.
XJP understands that you can't unwind China's productive output without destroying the country, but you can raise wages in China and create a larger middle class of 1.5 billion people that then becomes the consumers of all these Chinese made goods. So they transform. The China's goal right now under XJP is to clean out the cabal in China. The
Mm-hmm.
cabal are the Chinese expansionists,
Mm-hmm.
right? And to transform China into a stable, internally solvent, where you decrease the disparity of wealth, right? So that you have a strong middle class that can purchase, like Henry Ford, right? That can purchase the things that they make. So they're going to
Mm-hmm.
go into Fordism and away from their model that got them into the World Trade Organization in '99 under Clinton, and move away from that. China, there's a lot of misinformation about China.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Oh, especially in the last.
just because people like Trudeau or Schwab or Gates say that they would like to have the type of political power that Chinese elites have in China over Western countries doesn't mean that they want alliance with China. It doesn't mean that China's working with them. It just means
Mm-hmm.
they can see how that model, or how they understand that political model, could work for them. But it's not the same economic model. In the Western countries, there's no growth of the middle class. The middle class is shrinking and dying. That's why you have populist movements. But in China, the middle class is growing by leaps and bounds. They're buying expensive cars. China has more millionaires than some countries have populations.
Mm-hmm.
The middle class, the wealthy middle class, is growing by leaps and bounds. Consumerism is rampant there. Anyone who looks at Chinese TikTok can see how the culture has become very commercial oriented, and it's promoting, wealth aspiration and, social media credit, stuff like that, like not like social credit, but social media credit, like how cool are you, how sexy are you, like stuff like that. So, China is suffering from the same sickness of modernity as the West, but they're in the past, they're like China's culture in terms of consumerism and productivity is a lot like American culture was like in the 1960s.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just at a different time, like different timeline, in their development. Um, so it's really not comparable to the West.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but, you know, biggest mistake for Americans is to blame China for exporting things. The people that they should blame are their own economists and their own leaders for allowing that. They could have kept all the industry and jobs in America, and they could have kept a big middle class, but instead they decided to import things from China, and that's just how it happened. Not China's fault.
Okay, okay. So, Joaquin, what do you think? I haven't heard about the actions of this country, but I think we should talk about Iran. Have you heard anything from about an Iranian reaction on the on what's happening in Ukraine? Because I apologize, I didn't keep track of Iran.
I also haven't been keeping track of what Iran says. Um, you know,
I don't even know, did they condemn the recognition and the operation, or did they support it, or they
no
neutral?
idea. I just not following Iran these days.
Hmm.
My focus has been in the past. I've um, been very up on Iran. You know, Iranian television had me come on to talk about what's going on in Iran, but I'm not actually keeping up with Iran right now. It's out of my area of operation personally.
Uh-huh.
I've been focused on the Great Awakening and populism in the U.S.,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but I know that generally any problems with any problems that Russia has with Turkey will frustrate Iran. Um, you know, what the real economists who are decent economists in both Turkey and Iran want is to integrate the Turkish and Iranian economies more and more. You know, but the political differences and the geopolitics and the foreign meddling, you know, keep that from happening.
Yeah.
I'm of the view, and it may be unpopular, that Russia benefited very much from the West isolating Iran. And because in the iron rule in international relations, in diplomacy, is to have as many friends as possible. Alliances generally should be avoided unless that alliance triggers an immediate defense response. But if it's more likely to limit your trade options or put you into an entanglement like a war that you would not elect to have, then it comes at a great expense. So Iran's in a difficult place with its relationship with Russia. In an ideal situation for Iran, they wouldn't need to have its relationship with Russia. They would have stronger relations with Turkey, and they would be able to trade freely with Europe. And I have strong criticisms of Iranian leadership for believing um, believing the carrots being held out by the European side. It's a game. It's a scam. So when you look at Iranian media, they seem like they don't want to criticize Obama as
Oh,
much. You see what I'm saying?
because Obama signed the Iran deal and Trump like repealed the Iran deal. Oh, by the way, if we talk about Iran, we cannot avoid Israel. And I was actually pretty surprised when Israel, I don't know who said this, I know who was the official who said this, maybe foreign minister, maybe someone else, but actually Israel said it's not gonna impose sanctions on Russia yet. I don't know. Have you heard about that?
No, I haven't been following what Israel says, but take a look at this update.
Mm-hmm. Kadyrov turned to Putin with a request to give permission to start a large-scale operation in all directions on the territory of Ukraine. I asked the leadership of the country, the supreme commander of the Russian armed forces, Vladimir Putin, to give all special forces the appropriate order so that they can finish with the Nazis and, of course, with the terrorists who killed our women, old people and children in the Chechen Republic. Oh, by the way, do you know there were actually volunteers from the Ukrainian like neo-Nazis who actually participated in the Chechen wars on the side of the jihadis?
Yes, I actually I tried
I
to tell a
think.
joke to Tim Kirby, and he didn't appreciate my
Mhm,
humor. You
mhm,
know, you know the
mhm.
meme with Pawn Stars. You know the meme with
What
the
meme?
TV show Pawn Stars with the pawn, you know, like the show where the guys appraise things and then the people try to sell them at the used items store, the pawn shop. Okay, there's an American show called, okay, never mind. Fuck the
I
joke.
don't know.
Okay,
I
never
don't know
mind.
that.
Never mind. It was just
Okay.
like there's a meme that's,
Pawn
you
Stars.
know,
Oh.
okay, there's a TV show called Pawn Stars. So there's an, and the guy, and people always come to him with valuable items or valuable whatever items, and they could be very valuable, but the guy always tries to lowball. He was like, the best I can do, like thing can be worth $5,000, and he goes, best I can do is $2,000 or whatever. You see, so it's a fucking meme, okay? So the, you know, but when I'm explaining a joke, it's not funny. People will get it. If I said, people have to know that Chechens and Russians had a conflict,
Mm-hmm.
okay? So then you have a Chechen guy at the Pawn Stars saying, hey, you know, like how much I can kill Russians, and the guy goes, best I can do is kill Ukrainians. That's all. So
Okay, but sorry, I didn't know about the show Pawn Stars. It wasn't like broadcasted in Russia, but maybe I don't know.
but I mean, you are aware there's a thing called TV and it has this thing called shows.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So there's a TV show called Pawn Stars, and there's a very famous meme now because it's like when you don't quite, like when you want something and you're not able to get that thing that you want, the guy goes, and the meme goes, best I can do is, and it's like some other shit, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or, you know, or it's like the kid wants something and the mom says, we have that at home.
Yeah.
But the thing you have at home is like some bad version of it. So it's like, mom, I want to kill Russians. It's like, we have kill Russians at home, and kill Russians at home is kill Ukrainians. Never mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So, do you think that like how much time it's left before Kiev is taken? What do you think? Maybe it's tomorrow or a day after tomorrow?
Um, I have no idea because the diplomatic angle is overarching one, and there can be any change of tact in diplomatic. Militarily, militarily, if you look at the history of the war games and
Yeah.
Russia's military doctrine, based on their force potential, their projected force potential, they could have Kiev already. So that tells me already that they don't have Kiev now is not because of military. There's diplomatic matters involved that I'm just not privy to.
Yeah, diplomatic games. Mm-hmm.
But they could have Kiev today if they wanted
Mm-hmm.
to. They could have Kiev tomorrow, but they could have had Kiev yesterday. According to the operations, according to the war games reports, they have Kiev in 12 hours or 8 hours or something of beginning of incursions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the reason they don't have Kiev is politics, and I don't know
Yeah.
what's going on with the politics. You see, because I don't know. It's really going to boil down to like where Kolomoisky is, where Akhmetov is on this, where, you know, other Ukrainian politicians are
Yeah.
on this. Like you
I haven't heard of Kolomoisky for the last like 2 years. It looks like he has gone hiding.
well, everybody wants him dead, so I don't. Not me. I mean, you know, in case I have someone who knows me listening, not me. I love the guy. You know, I'm just
No,
saying. You know,
not me. And I also don't want him dead because I want him. I want to see him in a court of justice
well, you can say
for
that, but you know,
for the crimes
I
he
never talk
committed.
about anybody who you know, can reach me.
Kolomoisky can reach you.
Dude, I'm in Belgrade.
Oh, okay. So, but I also want this guy alive but not because I like him, but because
I don't like him.
because I want to see him in a court of justice
Yeah.
as a convicted person, as a convict, not as a witness or as a convict.
Well, I just hope that all of the Ukrainian oligarchs can join hands and figure out how to solve this problem. And it's not going to be with Ukraine being a member of NATO or Ukraine trying to have rhetorical or actual war with Russia. I know that. And I know that what motivates Ukrainian oligarchs is modern. You
Oh,
see?
by the way, I'm sorry for interrupting, but speaking of Ukrainian oligarchs, any news from Poroshenko? I hear the reports that he has escaped, and that's unfortunate because I want to see Poroshenko in the court of justice as well.
Yeah, Poroshenko, who I'm sure is a very nice man, um, he was on TV earlier today or last night, but it was filmed in the afternoon. It's actually going around. So Americans have all seen this. Like he's trying to speak and say, and they're showing him like on CNN, former president of Ukraine, and he's saying like we have to stop the Russian invasion and stuff like this. And he's supposed to have like some military guys behind him, and they were like showing very bad arms handling and weapon safety. And the guy was like, he was like uh trying to like hold the gun in a way that is people who try to look tactical, hold it like this, right? On the they have their finger like this over the trigger. So he's trying to look kind of tactical, and then the clip just drops out of the gun right on TV. It was totally embarrassing. I don't know if you saw that, but it was pretty funny.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was we saw last of Poroshenko was yesterday, but I haven't heard that he's
Mm,
left the country.
yeah. And Turchinov, the guy who started the whole war in Donbass, he was the deputy president back there. He was like acting president after the Yanukovych fled the country. He was acting president, and he actually gave orders to start attacking Donbass. And I would like to see that Turchinov guy in the court of justice as well.
Was he in the Sloboda party?
Oh, I don't know. I don't exactly remember in which party he was. But
But yeah, Turchinov was like the
he's also a war criminal,
yeah big time war criminal.
big time. Yeah.
I mean, I think that this operation, I believe that within the denazification demands that Lavrov issued, that these people have to be turned over.
Yeah, they have to be. They need it alive.
It's so basically where we're talking right now
Hmm.
is Russia is about to do something very big.
The world will never be the same, will it?
The world's not been the same since the Great Reset started with the pandemic,
Oh.
But I think Ukraine will, no matter what, Ukraine will be smaller. And the only question is
Hmm.
how much smaller will Ukraine be? I
Hmm.
think that there's with many variables and possibilities in between, there's two basic trajectories. Either Ukraine capitulates now and Ukraine formally has all of its pieces except for the three regions, oblasts, and the Crimea Autonomous Zone, and maybe three. I think they might add Kharkov now as punishment.
Hmm.
Now they'll add Kharkov to the Donbass republics, but that's the best outcome for Kiev now. But if they continue, then they will lose all of the lands of Novorossiya,
Hmm.
all of them. I think they have to hold that out there, and if they can hold on to Kiev,
Hmm.
and that's going to be it. They're going to have. I mean, I'm going to show again so people can see
Hmm.
what I'm saying as we conclude here.
Yeah.
Um, this area here will
Yeah.
be Russia's operations are pretty decisive already in these regions anyway, because they
Hmm.
know where they have popular support. In other words, if you had a clean democratic referendum, you would get a pro-Russian vote in all of these without playing any games with who counts
Hmm.
the votes or, whatever. Just a clean
Hmm.
election would happen anyway. Maybe 60%, 70%, win, on the side of this direction, but that's still enough for a referendum. I think you need 2/3.
Hmm.
So, and there's this again, you can see it.
Hmm.
So here's this red dot, so people understand,
Is
is the
Kiev.
Kiev administrative region,
Yeah.
and probably Ukraine. would look like this if Kiev doesn't, just this yellow zone, let's say, to keep it simple.
Yeah.
Kiev will look, Ukraine will look like this, within a week or a month or something,
Mm-hmm.
if they don't come to their senses.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Ukraine could be a lot bigger, minus these two and this. I would say probably this one and this one will stay with Donbass now,
Oh,
no
yeah.
matter what. But they could lose this, and this. They could lose Odessa. They lost Snake Island already.
Oh, yeah, the Snake Island. Yeah, I saw the garrison there surrendered.
Yeah. That was a big lie in the West. They were saying that it was 13 guys who fought to the death.
But the garrison of Snake Island has actually surrendered.
Yeah, there's 80 of them, and they surrendered
Yeah.
instantly. There wasn't even a shot fired, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
So just lies and stories.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so much misinformation. I don't like wars.
Do you think I like it? Of course not.
Not implying that you do. I'm just saying I want this thing to be over with. And
yeah, I also want this.
I don't
thing
even
to
like
be...
to see soldiers get killed. Like I know the Ukrainian army guys, so people understand. You have the regular army, and then you have effectively SS brigades, the volunteer brigades. And the regular army, it's just an economic draft. People need to understand, that like Ukraine has like 60 to 70% youth unemployment. The only alternative is to join the army, to have a job. And that's going to pay like $100 to $200 a month. That's it. These guys don't want to die for that. They don't really believe in what they're doing. They probably voted against the president, but they just need a job. They don't want to die. We don't want to see them die. So there's really no one who's doing any fighting or dying are the bad guys. And that's the sad thing about wars. These oligarchs are going to get off. They have bank accounts in Cyprus and Switzerland. And, they're going to even be still relevant in Ukraine, even after denazification. I live in reality, bro. But definitely the warlords and the government elected or appointed like Turchinov and others are going to have to be brought to justice. And
they absolutely, justice must be done.
Yatsenyuk too.
Yeah,
and
they all must be brought to justice, and Poroshenko must be brought to justice.
It's a lower chance. Like the more wealthy, the lower the chance. Like you have a chance to bring Hillary Clinton to justice. You don't have a chance to bring Rothschild to justice. I mean, maybe, but not likely, right? So Poroshenko is a multi-billionaire. These people normally buy their way out of things. Not in China, by the way, but that's the situation in Ukraine.
Not in China.
And but yeah, I would just conclude very quickly that these are the two maps to look at. Anyone who wants to educate themselves on the possibilities should look at these two. And with that, I gotta tend to my fatherly duties here. I know that you've got something going on there now, so here's a good spot to wind up. But
I'm here back again.
Yeah, just saying, here's a good spot to wind up, I think.
Yeah.
My daughter, and she's gonna wake up and
yeah. Okay.
My wife and get lunch going. And,
we have to conclude, and I just want to say in conclusion that I want this war to end as soon as possible. I want the regime in Kiev, don't get me wrong, I want the regime in Kiev to capitulate. And because I want this war to end ASAP. I see the hysteria is huge. People are getting attacked just for being Russian. I've seen like a YouTube channel called Real Russian Club. It's about it's a teacher of Russian, online teacher of Russian, and even she is getting attacked by the fucking hate comments. And she even have to issue to drop a video where she is apologizing, and she's like, she's not Putin, she's basically is apologizing for being Russian. She's getting attacked for being Russian. And there are girls like women who do ASMR stuff. Do you know what ASMR is? Okay, but never mind. But even they have to, even they're like fucking hate comments for being Russian. People are getting attacked for being Russian. I heard reports of Russian and Belarusian truckers are getting attacked by Ukrainians in Europe. They get their headlights smashed. They're getting like the trucks are getting you know. It's crazy. It's insanity.
No, it is insane. But yeah, this is the map. People should, you can see. The thing is, people are getting acquainted with this for the first time. This is Kiev. This is Donetsk, and Lugansk was right about here. Here's Donetsk, and the fighting. Mariupol is right here. About, yeah, and that's a fight. And then here's Crimea, which is already Russia.
Yeah, it's Russia, and will forever be Russia. Yeah.
So with that, my friend, thank you for having me on.
Oh, thank you for coming here. I missed you, Joaquin. I've been waiting for.
Yeah, my wife's been very sick, and we have another baby on the way. And the holidays was very hectic. I'm behind on a lot of commitments and things I have to produce for people who are relying on me to do it, the public and my supporters and my job. And I'm like, still have about 400 emails to respond to.
Yeah, 400 emails.
Back into it here.
Thank you for spending time with me. Thank you, Joaquin.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I'll see you soon.
See you soon. Bye.